Hey, what's up, everybody? It is episode number 185 of the Audible Farm podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. Couchtown Coffee is roasted in Iowa by a musician. It is shipped to your door. All you have to do is grind it up and enjoy some delicious, delicious coffee. If you're interested in coffee shipped to your door at a very reasonable price, check out couchtowncoffee.com. Find a coffee you like, make an order, and if you let them know Audible Farm sent you, they'll give you 20% off. That's right, 20% off. Why? Because Couchtown Coffee is that awesome. Thanks, Couchtown. This week, I'm doing a replay episode. I'm replaying an episode I did a couple years ago. Let's see here. It would have been 2019 I would have done this episode. And it was with Dani Rabin from Marbin. And recently I saw, they're always going live. Danny's always live on the Marbin page. But recently I did see that Dani had a new guitar made, and it kind of just sparked some interest. I should hit him up about that. But this, it kind of inspired the replay episode for this week. I don't do too many episodes with too many quote-unquote famous people, but Dani, I guess if you want to put fame and attach it to something, he might be the most famous person that's been on the podcast. He's definitely toured quite a bit. He's been around the world and back again. I know a lot of things in his life have changed since this last episode, but Marbin is still crushing tours nonstop. It seems like as soon as one's done, they take a few weeks off while they schedule the next one, and then out they go again. So it's really cool to have him out there touring all the time. If you're not familiar with Marbin, I highly suggest checking him out. It's this fusion of jazz and some sort of like gypsy folk style music that just is so interesting and intriguing. I've seen them play a lot of different places. We talk about where they're from, etc. I had them on the podcast because they're in Iowa constantly. It seems like 4 or 5 times a year they're in Iowa. So if you guys want to check them out, it's definitely not hard to find them in or around Iowa or right on the border. That I've seen them in Omaha and across the river in the Quad Cities before. So they're all over the place. Check them out. It's really cool. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. This is episode 185 with Dani Rabin, and it's a replay from 2019.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, so I'm sitting down today with Dani Rabin.
That's right.
You are the guitarist in Marbin.
Yep.
And Marbin is from Chicago. Is that where you guys are based out of?
We're based out of Chicago, yeah. But not from there.
No. Well, where are you from originally?
Israel. I'm from a town called Rehovot.
Okay. I'm not going to try and pronounce that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It means streets.
Streets?
That's the literal translation. So
it's a town.
I'm from the streets.
You're from the streets.
Yeah.
The mean streets.
The mean streets of Rehovot.
So what brought you over here then?
Music.
Yeah. Did you come to school over here to do music, or?
I initially went to Berkeley College
cool.
of Music, 2003.
Nice.
And then I graduated 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back for a summer to Israel, and I met Dani Markovich. And then we came to Chicago together.
Uh-huh.
I moved from Boston to Chicago.
Oh,
and,
cool.
We just started. Well, eventually we started Marbin, and it went through a few transformations.
Yeah, the band has changed a little bit over the years. I've seen different drummers and bassists.
Yeah.
But you and Dani and Dani,
yeah,
you guys have been the two that have been.
Yeah, we wrote the music.
Yep.
And Marbin is Markovich Rabin, so.
Oh.
Yeah, we would have to.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was wondering where the name came from.
Yeah. So we would have to find another person that has that in their name if we wanted to change lineups.
Yeah. It's already tattooed onto the band. It can't be changed.
No, it cannot be changed. We actually were discussing how stupid of a name that is for years, but then, and our 5th album, the name is Aggressive Hippies,
yep.
And we thought that's a great name for a band, but then we started seeing all these bands that have names with literal meaning,
mm-hmm.
and suck to be on stage and just be like, we are aggressive hippies. We are aggressive like every night. You know? So I'm actually now coming full circle to the beginning and thinking that it's brilliant to have a name that doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
Because, you can...
I totally get that because it's up to whoever's listening's interpretation. Or it
and also you don't fall into like your own self-fulfilling prophecy.
Bingo, yeah.
You know,
it's
not,
not.
Like, I would hate to be Cannibal Corpse. I know they're playing in town tonight too.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, it's like we are Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah,
we are like after like 25 years, like. You're all like fat and old, and you're like, I am Cannibal Corpse.
It becomes a caricature of yourself, almost like. And I'm not trying to like pick on bands, but like when the Misfits went back on tour, they got picked on a lot because they weren't quite what they used to be.
Yeah.
So
Metallica's a great name.
Yeah,
It's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Has metal in it.
Okay, let me ask you this: how many people? This is going to sound really dumb. How many people have tried to interact with you thinking like one of you guys is named Marbin?
Oh, I get that all the time because I do all the Facebook Live stuff. So they're like, Marbin, I love your playing. I'm like, yep.
Yes,
but it's
our playing is good. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of people think that's because we're not from this country, so they look at us and hear maybe a little bit of accent, especially when Dani talks like, oh, that must be a name from their culture. But Marbin's not a Hebrew thing. It's just Markovich Rabin.
That's awesome. I guess I never even knew that either.
Yeah.
But I've been like following you guys online for quite a while. And that was one of the things that drew me to you guys originally was the fact that you had a ridiculously big following on Facebook. Mm-hmm. You were constantly posting things. You
still am.
You would do the sponsored content. So every time you were around, I would see that you were doing a show. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were always really good and active about that. Other things I would see would like you're interacting with people. So like you would go live and just be like, I'm playing at this coffee shop in this town, and I'm going to teach you a little bit of something about this.
Yeah.
And you went to Berklee School of Music, so you're a little bit above my level of playing because I can play guitar, but half the time I get about 5 minutes into what you're talking about, I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about at all anymore. So. Well,
I mean, I get some criticism from people who would like me to slow down the pace or explain some things that are a little simpler, but the internet's very slam packed with that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So I mean, I think the kind of thing I'm going for, I think it's helpful for people who have some sort of background in jazz, and I think it's helpful for other people to understand that this stuff is a language and just kind of get generally inspired. And like if somebody is using terminology that you're not familiar with, then I think a big part of inspiration is just going out and seeking out those words. Like people keep saying, I don't know, fifths, or or like talking about intervals, or saying triads, and you're not quite sure what that means. So it's like you're missing that piece of Lego that kind of like constructs that bigger meaning.
Exactly.
And you don't need your hand held through everything in music. A lot of time it's just enough to just be like, oh my God, I'm sick of not understanding what that word is. Let's look it up. And but yeah, it tends to be that the thing people are really lacking is the drive to start a big project like learning theory from scratch.
Yeah.
Because it seems bigger than it is.
I mean, I've got like basic music theory, so the concepts you're teaching are not like super foreign to me, but in the general gist of what's going on, I'm still kind of like, you're a little over my head because I've only taken like level 1 music theory.
Yeah.
So I know basically kind of what you're talking about when you're talking about, we're in the Ionian here, and but then you start to get kind of crazy when you're talking about, we could play this pattern, and then if you go to the second, this pattern, and the third is this pattern, and the fourth. Like you were doing that the other day, and I was watching, and like I said, I got like 3 minutes in, and I kind of got
the question
lost.
is, where do you get lost, and why? Right?
That's true.
So it's like you just gotta like find exactly like that point where somebody's talking and you're no longer following. It's like what a good like if you want to get actually inspired to learn something, all you gotta ask yourself is what happened there. It's like that point where I said something and you're all of a sudden kind of off the train.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, so how do I stay just past that moment? What is that thing I didn't understand that made me confused? And I think if you tackle your practice one thing at a time, eventually you'll run out of things
Yeah.
You just be able to be a part of the conversation. I think the talk about music theory isn't as infinite or complex as you might think it is.
Yeah.
The real part where people start falling off that train is where you have to apply the theory to your instrument and sound good.
Exactly.
But that's...
I could see that a lot because I learned music theory like when I was like 18 on a piano. And then by the time I was like 28 and wanted to try to apply what I learned 10 years ago to a guitar, it was completely different because I was trying to take a concept and apply it to a completely different thing.
Sure. I think when we teach a lot of master classes in universities and high schools and do that kind of stuff when we're touring in the day, and we get to see where people disagree with the way we teach and the way we talk, because there's a lot of contradicting ideas floating around right now in the world of music. And I think there's not a whole lot of consensus about the meaning of words in general, especially when you get specialized. Like when you say harmony, negative harmony is like a thing now. But like, never mind that, but like, harmony theory even, people don't agree on what music theory is. And you get to see a lot of people who are very married to maybe a definition of something that their first music teacher gave them that might not be, useful to them. So the way I would look at music theory is very unlike scientific theory. And that's very confusing for people because when people think about theory, they think about relativity or gravity.
Yep, it's a law.
Or, yeah, something like scientific theory where it's something that you can prove or disprove, right? But music theory doesn't work like that. Like you get rules. Rules in music are like you can't play a C sharp on a C chord. And then you go to a piano and you go plank, did it.
Yep.
So it's like, what does it mean can't?
That's true.
You can do whatever you want. The problem is it sounds, it makes a sound. And what you're really doing is you're categorizing. So it's less like scientific theory and it's more like owning a gigantic library, where you have millions of books and you're the librarian.
All right.
And a good librarian has a choice of how he's going to organize all these books.
That makes sense, yeah.
So you can do it by width, height, name of author, name of publication, era, whatever. And then you get into these positions where there's a job to do, meaning somebody can walk into your library and say, I want, all the books written in France between 1932 and 1934. Now, if that's the job and you organized all your books by width, you're fucked.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it's like if the job is playing jazz and the way you have arranged your knowledge is the way that's useful for the job of a classical musician, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do, right? Your theoretical understanding doesn't suit the task at hand.
That makes sense.
Most people can't commit to a task at hand. And you see it a lot. If your task is playing rock, right, or blues, and you learn pentatonic scales and have great vibrato and nice tone and know all these rock songs, and now all of a sudden you want to play jazz, right? Your system of organizing your musical world, it's not that it's terrible, it's just not suited for the job. So you got to rethink about where you're going to put all these books, or maybe like you got to come up with like new ways of categorizing things.
Exactly.
So, but right now more and more what you see is it's almost, how kids now are not even playing video games. They're watching people playing video games. There's all these sites where you get to see somebody watching somebody else do something. That's more and more prevalent because you have so many examples of people who can play things, like you're scrolling through Instagram. So the net time that you're touching your instrument and figuring stuff out on your own is getting reduced because you're just consuming content, consuming other people doing things. And that's a very bad thing.
That makes sense.
If you need to get, just watching endless examples of people sounding okay is not a substitute for practicing. So you need to spend a ton of time holding the instrument, and the moment you see something interesting, you have like two urges that are competing. One is to go to the next video of another interesting thing, to understand it deeper, maybe another explanation. But all you're doing is getting better at Googling, So you gotta put it on the instrument and put it in, this grinding again and again from different angles is what gets you good eventually.
Yeah, that makes total sense because, I mean, every time I see you and you're online, either doing Facebook Live or whatever, you're almost never just sitting there talking. You almost always have a guitar in your hand.
Yeah.
So it's one of those other things where you have constant exposure to always touching a guitar, and you're not just sitting at a laptop Googling stuff. And
you know, for me, all the gypsy jazz stuff for me was, you know, really a hobby. It's very fun, but it's not what I do full time, which is Marbin. But you know, still, everything feeds each other, and you know, I'm always playing. I'm always trying to get better at something.
yeah.
You know, when it comes to music, I'm constantly thinking about, you know, what tools I don't have, how to improve the things I do have, like, you know, how to improve technique, just fretboard knowledge. Like, you know, there's always, if you're really looking, you know, you're always in a position where there's so much more you don't know than what you do know. Like,
Yeah.
what you do know is such a narrow band. It's like, you know, I know some things. I know how to sound good through some songs, but, you know, it's not like my vocabulary is not endless.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, there's a popular quote that goes something like, as the island of your knowledge grows, so does the shore of your ignorance.
Right.
So, you know, the bigger your knowledge is, you just realize you realize how much you don't know the more you learn.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a crazy concept to think about.
Well, with music, it's weird because at a certain point, there's like this one leap that some people do, which is the leap into sounding good, you know? And it's very amazing because there are, like, once you become a voice on your instrument, not a lot of people make that leap to where they just are a thinker that just kind of is one of the mouthpieces. And it's almost like there are two scales. There's the scale of sounding bad and the scale of sounding good. And some people are very low on the scale of sounding good, and some people are very high on the scale of sounding bad. But those two don't ever touch.
Okay, yeah, I
You
see
know
what
what
you're
I
saying.
mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's like waking up, coming to awareness or something. That thing where you actually start playing, where you just kind of sink into yourself and you're like, oh, like this is for real and I'm playing for real and I get to actually move things in time and color things, you know, and make choices that have weight. And before you do that, you're just kind of like a kid playing. And a lot of people just never wake up, you know, and there's nothing to do, you know, there's nothing to do for people like that. You have to, it's kind of like a rite of passage kind of thing. Some people just seem to get there and some don't.
Yes, you have to take the initiative yourself to put in the work by yourself. Because so much of what people think is like, this guy's a guitar player. He's out there every night and he's just shredding it up, and chicks are hanging off of him and blah. Like, how much time did you spend alone at your house doing guitar stuff to get as good as you did? You know, and it's
I still do.
Yeah.
I still spend most of my time alone
you
doing
know,
that stuff.
And along with that, I really enjoy the analogy you made of there's a scale of bad guitar players, and you can be the best bad guitar player or like one of the people that's a good guitar player, and if you're in the lower echelons of that, there's a big leap between there. And when you described it like that, I remember just being that kid with a guitar, and it's like, oh, I'm just playing tabs. Somebody wrote this, and this has to be what it is, you know, like this. So you're just going by whatever somebody tells you or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then somewhere in my 20s, I was just like, I'm going to start trying to pick up like rock and blues and scales and trying to figure out theory and put it all together on a guitar. And I started doing exactly what you're saying. I had this like epiphanic moment where I realized I was learning things, and I could go out to like blues jam nights and actually fit in with these people and do things and have a tiny little bit of a voice of my own. I mean, granted, so many people there were so much better than me at the time, but it was still one of those things where you said it's this weird leap you take. Even if you're at the very bottom of the people that are good at playing, it's just kind of like, wow, this is something different, completely different than what I was doing before.
Well, as a listener, it's very obvious, at least for me. It's like it's so weird because like it's hard to talk about this balance between subjectivity and objectivity. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like Charlie Parker to me is objectively, you know, if not the best, for sure one of the best saxophone players that ever lived. Why? Well, because if I have to like kind of rank them, you know, against every other saxophone player, I can pretty logically, like, you know, say, you know, kind of grade them to be that way. But you know, it's hard to. It's hard in the field of aesthetics to break, like, you know, how can you make objective claims in something that you perceive like absolutely subjectively?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But still, it's like it's easier in sports, right? Like Michael Jordan is objectively
Yes.
one of the greatest,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's weird because music is almost like nobody would listen to a 5-year-old and Charlie Parker play and say that the Charlie Parker and that the 5-year-old is better,
Yeah.
even though they both might make sounds, right?
Exactly.
And in kind of a postmodern world, you know, you could say that they're both equal, but it doesn't really work like that. We notice. You know, Miles Davis has a good quote that he said that I'm not the best because there's no such thing, but I'm one of the best. You know?
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, even though I don't think he's one of the best, but he thought so.
Well.
But yeah, but it's a tricky kind of thing. So, but the point I was originally trying to make was that as listeners, we know what quality is when we're faced with it. I believe, at least I can say that I do, and there are all sorts of qualities that exist, and I think the healthy, you can make healthy choices with listening just like you can with food. So I'm not gonna name any people I hate, but like there's a lot of music I dislike, and not because it's terrible, but because it's poisonous. You know, like McDonald's. It's the McDonald's of music, you know, to where it's like produced to satiate this thing inside you that's hungry for garbage and leaves you feeling worse than when you first got on the ride.
Yeah, there's no nutritional value to what, you know.
No, and some people just, you know, there's some people are just so good that it goes beyond your mechanisms of like jealousy or, you know.
I get exactly what you're saying. Going back to the sports analogy, it's like Tom Brady. Love him or hate him, he's friggin' good.
Yeah.
You know, that's the reason people love or hate him. You know, so it transcends whether or not you like the person actually, and it's just like, well, obviously the guy's good, and that's why you don't like him, or you do like him. You know, so that same thing with some musicians. They're so good at what they do. It's like you can't say they're not good.
Yeah, I mean, you can say whatever you want, but you could just be wrong. You know? But it's yeah, listening to Django Reinhardt or Charlie Parker or Mozart, you know, it's the kind of thing that's designed to make you feel something that you need to feel.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than something that's just, you know, targeting the weakest part of your brain.
Yeah.
Or just hungry for a beat.
I mean, you can even take that and extrapolate it. Like, if you only practiced, like, Ramones punk songs, and I'm not trying to crap on anyone, but if that's all you ever practiced and you got the best at that, you're not really utilizing too much of your learning ability by only ingesting that. And like I said, I'm not trying to crap on the Ramones or anybody that because
I
like,
barely even know him, so it's okay.
Yeah, but it's just punk music, you know. It's power chord, 3-chord punk music, but it's still one of those deals where, like, if that's all you're doing and that's the only thing you're doing, you're not expanding your width of knowledge or your practicing regimen or anything like that any farther than that.
Sure.
It's not like it kind of comes back to this almost quote unquote poisonous, like we were talking about earlier. You're not doing yourself any favors in that aspect too. So it could come down to even like not just listening, but like as far as what you're learning on the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you can have a good path through art and music if you just are honest about how things make you feel. You know, because like when you're doing aesthetic things, the whole point of it is to make people, you know, and yourself, you know, feel something. So the depth of what you're able to give can't ever be larger than the depth of what you can perceive. So whatever kind of defining electric moment you have with music kind of defines the pinnacle of what you're capable of, right? So like the deep experiences you have maybe as a kid, maybe as an adult, realizing things, diving deep, you know, having some sort of reaction to music, that's kind of like the groove inside you that defines the depth of what you're able to communicate to another person. People can't It's like I heard an author talk about this, that you can't ever write a character that's funnier than you are. You know,
That's
or
true.
smarter than you are, because that's you
Because
have these human limits on
Human
you.
limits.
and
You can't imagine yourself to be funnier.
Yeah,
You know.
so it's like you can't have an emotional depth that you're incapable of in your music. You know.
That's actually really deep and really brilliant.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we're busting out some good stuff here today. Like while we're on this topic, kind of like maybe have people having different opinions about music. You're no stranger to people having opinions that differ from yours online.
Yeah.
Because you have so many Facebook followers, you also have a lot of Facebook detractors, let's say.
the Marbin Strikes Back.
Yes, sir. I'm talking about the hashtag of Marbin Strikes Back, which a few years ago I thought was like, I was like, man, these guys are ballsy doing this. And then after a while, it's like, yeah, why shouldn't they strike back? You know, there's so many people that.
Well, we just decided that we're gonna have like a zero tolerance policy to it. So, and it's just, well, first of all, they don't understand. We control the conversation in the sense that the way Marbin Strikes Back works is they write something, I write something back, they write something back, I write something back, I take a snapshot of it, and then I post it.
Yes.
So I decide when the conversation's over. And that's a lot of, it's like talking shit. It's like hackling in a stand-up show, not realizing that the comedian's holding the mic.
Bingo.
It's not a balanced debate. You're gonna always, you know, and the whole idea of the strikes back, it's like, you know, I would never talk shit on the internet, but I'm amazed at the amount of people that would.
That will,
So,
yeah.
So I always, but also I'm always trying to be not horrible to them.
Bingo.
Personally. But if I'm cranky, sometimes I go over my.
Well, I mean, justifiably so, though. Like some of the things people say, it's pretty attacking of like the music that you guys put out.
completely.
You know, it's like something. I'm just trying to think of something. It's usually something along the lines of like more notes doesn't equal something, blah blah, whatever,
right.
something.
Less
And-
is more.
Yeah, and one of the arguments for that is like, why don't you just play more notes and you'll see how fun it is, or like something like, it's just one of those types of deal.
There's literally a billion comebacks, but you know, I always find that the whole less is more thing and aesthetic minimalism and this thing that they're trying to push, that's really popular in our generation, is just none of my favorite. Literally none of my favorite players came from this school of thought.
Yes.
It's so antithetical. It's so ignorant, because if you think about rhythm, which is the guiding principle of music, if you play less diverse rhythms, less subdivisions, then you just have less options. It's just like saying
Yes.
that I don't enjoy colors, so pictures should be black and white from now on.
Yeah.
You know, because there's too much going on. Like people have already done colors. You know,
Yeah.
but
It's like somebody's sitting with an 8-pack of Crayola crayons, and they're like, "This is the only crayon box you should ever use." And you're sitting here
Yeah.
with a 64 box, and they're like, "You loser,"
Yeah.
and you're just like, "Why am I bad? Because I have more crayons than you,"
yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, when you're trying to improvise, what you're really trying to do is kind of have freedom and have tools to follow ideas to fruition, and yeah, sure, like a lot of it's really technical, and I also understand, when you're talking about musical phrasing, there's 3 modes of playing that you can lump anybody's solo in history into, right? So you can call them different names, but like the way I like to call them is making statements, which that's kind of like, most of B.B. King's playing, things that kind of echo in your mind that you can sing back.
Okay.
Riding the groove, which is just like the talking part of soloing that's kind of like meandering and just feels good but not necessarily memorable.
Okay.
And then there's the shredding, right? It's like the stuff that's dazzling
Yep.
or overwhelming. And those are really the three things you can do.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like you can kind of have this, like if you're playing on a show, do, go, 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 that kind of thing, and you're playing you're riding the groove. You're
Yep.
not making statements.
Yeah, it's nothing.
But if you go like, and that's fine. It's a part of soloing. And if you go like, kind of echoes back in your
Yep,
mind, right?
yep.
You
You
get
can
that. And if you go like, it's like nobody remembers that, but it
Exactly.
does something.
Yes.
And those three things and phrasing in conjunction, in a right balance with each other, create interesting solos.
Yes.
So it's like it's not. It's like saying like I don't like people who walk on two legs. Let's chop off one of the legs. It's like hop everywhere. It's more interesting.
And
It's like
Well, I get what you're saying. Like this morning, I was cruising through some of your discography. I was showing someone. I was like, "Well, this is Marbin. They're going to be at Lefties tonight or whatever. Like, check it out."
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, this is totally not what I was thinking it was," because I didn't tell them anything about it. It's kind of like showing them a random movie and not telling them anything. And you just like, here's the title, and then they get like half an hour into it, like, "Oh, this is what?" Okay, so that was kind of what it was like. But the more I realized it, and I listened deeper into your music, because I've seen you guys a handful of times live. I've listened to all your music, but the deeper I listened to it, I realized that exactly those three things are almost in every single song in some form, which is kind of cool because you'll sit there and you'll be like, you get some shreddy stuff, but you also get like the phrasing that is the common phrasing through the song, but then there's like shreddy solo-y stuff, and usually somewhere in the middle you guys hit like a groove where everybody's kind of grooving out at the same time. And now that it's kind of crazy that now that you sit here and explain this stuff, I'm finding your music to be a little bit I'm finding I can understand it a little bit better, because before it was just like, it's so foreign to me,
Yeah.
You're in Iowa right now. I'm born and raised in Iowa, so I only have the exposure of what Iowa has to give, and I have no gypsy jazz background at all. Those are two backgrounds I don't have anything that I know about. But now that you explain it with that basic outline, I kind of get the gist of it
but
overall.
I mean, if you listen from that perspective to Charlie Parker or Django or anybody, John Coltrane, they all. It's not that we invented it. It's all you can do. You can't do that many things. There aren't that many things in music, right?
So
when you're just playing rhythms for people, one of three things can happen. They could be memorable, they could be just pleasant and grooving, or they can be dazzling and overwhelming. That's it, right? It's like that's all I mean by that. And a good solo has a balance of those things. So you gotta if you shred the whole time, like, I don't know, like some shrapnel guys like from the 80s where it's just not interesting music. It just sounds like...
There was a point where that happened. I
Yeah.
love shredder. That's probably my favorite style of guitarist is shred playing, but there was a point in the 80s where it's just like, it's overboard.
Right.
You can't play 240 beats per minute, 16th notes the whole time.
A guy like Yngwie, like, to me, like, was super, like, you listen to the solo on, like, Black Star or something. It's like, it's super balanced. It's like he's playing a lot of, like, things that are riding the groove, but definitely memorable statements, like all over those solos, like the well, what I do, it's like the way that solo starts, it's fucking awesome, or like for the love of God, Steve Vai, it's like tons of statements, but then it's balanced between all these great, all the top echelon players in that style had to follow it or it wouldn't have worked.
That makes total sense.
But then you get into like Rusty Cooley and like the people kind of after that kind of tried to just shred.
Yep.
And I mean you do get to this thing where it's not less is more. You need to have just as much, but you need to have
the proper balance of it all.
Yeah, you need to understand what makes good solos.
Yeah.
And it's not just the flashy part of it,
Yeah, so the analogy is like most people eat cookies because they're sweet tasting, but you can't make cookies with just like 90% sugar. It doesn't make any sense,
Right. You're not going to like do lines of sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, one of the things when I started like following you guys online and stuff like that, we talked about it first, was you were always online playing. You're always kind of saying like, well, here's how I kind of view this person's style. They used a lot of these phrases or a lot of these patterns, because that's usually what a lot of players do, is they'll pick handfuls of patterns and phrasings and styles they like and just that's their set that they usually use for the most part. So you can kind of nail down some people's styles pretty good. You're pretty good at that. I think that probably has to do with your musical teaching, whereas opposed to somebody like me, I'm just kind of guesswork for the most part.
I feel like for me, I always had this ability to look at the big picture and understand how to articulate the details that make it work.
Yeah.
Right? So that's that's something that, like, I guess I didn't have to work on very much, because I would always kind of gravitate into the things that I, the best of my judgment were like the essential kind of bits of information inside this big complicated thing.
Makes sense.
And if you can kind of go in there and extract those and practice those and show them to people, they react. But I think, the Facebook Live thing took off, first of all, because the band was doing well, and we had enough people kind of, responding to our page, so a lot of people were watching it. But I don't know, if you're kind and generous to people, they tend to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
they respond to it.
I mean, you're giving back in more than just like video lessons. I've seen you post like, well, here I've drawn out every scale you can play.
Yeah.
And I've seen you draw that sheet out and share that a couple times. And you're good at going back in time and resharing things that you've already posted once, which I think is beneficial, because how many times do you go through Facebook and you see something, you're like, I'm never seeing that again.
Right.
I'll never find it again.
Well, I mean, with the live videos, I wouldn't even know how to begin, because I've done hundreds and hundreds of hours of those. So, yeah. But I mean, I have students that go back and fish something out and share it, and then, do that. But the interesting thing about that is that, this is kind of like the new thing from the era that we live in, that you get, if you're, I guess, confident enough to interact online, which I know a lot of people are just kind of silent passengers on this live feed thing.
Yep.
They shouldn't be. Like, if you have a question, you're pretty likely to get it. If you ask something, I'm probably going to answer it.
Exactly.
And,
you guys have always been good about that. Even if I'm just like watching, it's like, oh, you guys, it's midnight, you're on the road, you're talking about something, I'm just like, drive safe, and you're just like, oh, Peter says drive safe, thanks. And you're good at interacting with everybody, even if it's just a little bit for simple things that they're trying to say.
I understand that they are people.
Exactly.
It's I don't know. It's like I don't it's very strange. We got to spend some time with people who were known guitar players in the 90s and 2000s that grew up in the 80s and the heyday of guitar. And they had a sort of distance from their audience it was never my experience. I never felt like,
Any sort of connection to them, or?
Well, I mean, for me, we started from nothing, so it's like, I was talking to everybody at our show, and even when we played big shows now, it's just, I understand it's people. I don't think it's like my fans.
Yeah, exactly.
I must escape them to the green room. I'm going to go out of the back door before somebody talks to me.
Oh, yeah.
I don't feel that way. So I understand that those people on the other side are people who are curious. And I don't know, maybe, I think psychologically it actually might break down a little bit of the mechanism of fan and artist, because I think people like to imagine you being not a person, being kind of bigger than life, and it's like you let their fantasies fill in a lot of blanks, and I can see that we don't do that, and some people are. Like, I'm pretty sure, the guys in, I don't know, Wolfpack or some band that's like huge right now, have very little interaction with their fan base. And I don't know, past a certain size, maybe it's not possible. But I don't know, for me, it was always, I just treat people the way I treat people, which is try to be as nice as I can and try to be generous. I can't subscribe to the idea of keeping your teachings secret, but I'm not trying to sell them. So that's another thing that's very different than a lot of guitar players now are just especially in gypsy jazz, they keep having these online academies and lessons that cost subscription money, or they want you to download their lessons for $30 a pop or something. For me, that's free, man. Just the thing I'm selling music. You know, you buy our albums
Yep.
and come to our shows, and that's all I ever wanted to do.
You know, and that's one of the reasons I think I respected you so much about like your music is your music's everywhere on every streaming service and everywhere. So like I can access so much of your content for free that going to your shows live, buying your T-shirts. I got the Do you even shred, bro? I love that shirt. I love wearing it places. But yeah, like I mean, I go to your shows every time you're in Iowa just for the simple fact that it's like this is how I'm going to pay this band back for putting all this content online. It's not much different than like a podcast. You know, like comedian podcasts are a big deal right now. So like the only way to pay these comedians off for their podcasts is go see them live. I mean, granted, they're getting like ad revenue and whatever, but still, like it's the concept is still the same.
Hey, I'm wearing MeUndies right now because of Bill Burr.
Really?
Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. That's awesome. Actually, I shouldn't even mention it. I'm at a coffee shop right now. I won't mention my sponsor because it's another coffee place.
Oh, shit.
No, it's cool. It's cool. We'll talk about it afterwards. But yeah, so like your guys' online content is amazing. So much so to the fact where like your quest for tone brought you guys to. Were you like crossing the border into Mexico on foot? What was all that about? I was watching that.
Yeah. So this is day 44 of a 44-day tour right now, and about halfway through it, we were playing in. We drove from. Where did we drive from? It's from Flagstaff, Arizona from what's the big city in Arizona?
Tucson,
No,
Arizona,
not Tucson.
Phoenix.
We drove from Phoenix to El Paso, and then we had two shows that day. We had one in Juarez, playing the jazz festival in Juarez, and then late at night we had one in El Paso, and like the promoter told us like the line to go into Mexico is like 5 minutes, and then to go back into the USA is like 7 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's fucking crazy.
Yes.
Trying to get back because everybody wants to be in this country for some reason because it's awesome.
It is.
It really is awesome, dude. People that think it's not awesome should go other places. It's so awesome.
Bingo. Even other great places seem not quite as awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. Like the fact that you could just drive 44 days.
And you would know that more than anybody because of how much you're not even from here, so you would definitely know.
And in a lot of ways, socially, it's not amazing. Like to hang out, there are better places to hang out in the world, but to work, oh my God, dude. It's just an amazing. Anyways, not gonna go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So he's like, we have to go on foot, and because we wouldn't be able to make it back to our show in time.
So you went on foot?
So we drove to El Paso.
Okay.
But they had a cab for me, but like some transistor head. So we got my pedal board and my head, 100-watt tube head, it weighs like 100 pounds, and our guitars, cymbals, snare drum. We parked right on the border of El Paso and Juarez, and then we walked about a mile across the bridge carrying all the gear on foot, and then they picked us up, drove us to the jazz festival. We played the gig. They drove us back. By the way, we're famous in Mexico. It's crazy. There's like single women in our shows, like Marbin. It's very weird. It's not like the U.S. at all. And then we came back, carried all our shit back on foot, got to the venue just in time, and it worked out. But I'm pretty particular about. I would have played what they had, but it would have sucked. So
yeah, I mean,
so I'm very glad I got to play my own amp, and the people that paid money got to hear it the way I like to hear it.
Exactly. I mean, there's this giant argument that is like a great musician can make any gear sound kind of like what they want it to. You can manipulate it in a fashion, or your playing style will lend itself.
I mean, you're gonna sound like you, but it's like, I don't know. I guess a great audience member would forgive you sounding 10% shitty. But do they take the same kind of
That's true. That's true.
You know what I mean? Do you extend this logic to the audience too?
That's true.
It's like
Yeah.
if the artist is so great as the audience, can the audience also be so forgiving?
Yeah, true. So it's not like you're gonna. Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like
You could show up with a line 6 and rock a line 6.
listen, I'm gonna play the same kind of lines, the same kind of rhythms. It's just gonna sound
Different.
like,
Yeah.
it's gonna sound like me playing through whatever.
Yep. Yeah.
You know,
makes
so
sense.
I mean, people that are really into my playing are gonna like it, but liking my playing is also liking my music is also liking my judgments about sound.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I picked that gear over a very long period of time to fit what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's faulty logic. It's like saying Van Gogh is great. He's gonna be great with a pencil. It's like, sure, he's going to be great with a pencil, but do you really want a bunch of pencil drawings in your house
Yeah.
or in the fucking Louvre?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
you don't.
Yeah,
you want to see
total-
that guy do the thing, do the job with the right tools for the job.
That totally makes sense.
You
That
know?
totally makes sense.
So it's like, it's not like he's going to be a terrible painter. He'll figure something out.
Yeah.
But it's like, do you want to see that like bastardized version of the thing?
Exactly.
As opposed to the thing itself?
It totally makes sense now. Like, especially when it comes down to like, I go to shows enough. I've seen you. This will be like my 4th or 5th time seeing you in like maybe 3 years or just under 3 years. Because like I said, you guys tour through Iowa a decent amount.
Yeah.
So I usually like to peek at everybody's pedal boards because it's like, what's on there? And yours changes a decent amount.
Yeah, mine's totally different now.
Not a lot, but it does change.
Now it's totally different.
Yeah, from the first time I saw it, it's not even the same because I think you put a video up online of it maybe not too long ago. So what's the thing that gets you to change what's on your pedal board then in regards to your tone? Because I feel like a lot of people just find something, stick with it, never change.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were a few things that were really pivotal for me. So in the beginning, I played with a lot of pedals. I think up till maybe 2014, maybe 15. And then I started playing acoustic guitar. I started getting into gypsy jazz. And I started noticing my guitar technique changing, and I was looking for a response from the guitar, from the electric guitar, that was kind of hard to explain for people who don't understand what it feels like to play lines on an acoustic guitar. But when you do it, there's a certain kind of snappiness and quickness to the notes. You start getting really used to the way an acoustic instrument behaves, that if you grow playing digital gear, you know, my first kind of setup was like those red pods.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
Oh,
through
yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
terrible speakers and like a metal kind of thing. So it's, you know, delay and very compressed and light touch, and you don't really develop kind of a general guitar technique where you're kind of hitting the notes in time, but you're not really playing dynamically. It wouldn't work it doesn't translate, right? If you
Yep.
play it like just through a clean amp or on an acoustic guitar, you would get no sound.
Yep.
You know, it would it's almost like the guitar is a MIDI controller at that point. And I was getting farther and farther away from that. And then I was noticing that my sound was compressed, and also there was a lot of signal loss because of all the cable and pedals. So I just went really minimalist. And for years, I was just doing boost pedal, overdrive pedal, and a delay. And
Yeah, that sounds
that's-
familiar.
And that's all I really had for a long time. Delay in the effects loop, like a 100-watt head with 2 channels. I've been using the same head forever, which is a custom Audio Electronics OD100.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time, I think it was an RC booster and maybe an Maxon SD9.
Yep.
Which is really imitating Scott Henderson.
Yeah, it's a like seafoamy green kind of colored one.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite the Tube Screamer color.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So I had that for a long time. And then I replaced that distortion pedal for another one by Exotic called the Soul Driven, and I played that one for years.
Yeah, I remember that one being on your
and
board.
that's gone now. And then this year I got the G2, which is the switching system that the Gig Rig makes. The guys that have that pedal show on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that Dan he designed this switching system. It's kind of like a Bradshaw switching system, but very small, and you know, that allowed me to bring some pedals back into the chain.
Yep.
And it also controls the channel switching of my amp, which is nice.
Oh,
So,
cool.
Yeah, so now everything's kind of presets and no more dancing around. And
That's nice.
the latest thing that happened after that was the guy from Vertex, Mason, Vertex Pedals, reached out and sent me a bunch of pedals, and they're so good. And Mason got into some heat over. I'm not gonna get into it, but like, it's pretty funny. A lot of people online like are really resentful towards him for like a scandal they had with wah pedals, and for me, I don't care like even a little bit. I just listen to pedals. I don't get into that stuff. And his pedals were just so good, because they're kind of like, Dumbles.
Okay.
And they voice your amp to sound similar to the old Dumbles. And there's one called the Ultraphonics that I use now for my lead sound. And I started this tour, and I've used it every show. I love it. It's beautiful.
Those old Dumble amps, those were made where it was like this EQs on one channel stacked to the next channel or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Could be.
I recently got into reading those because some people were starting to re-boutique those amps out again.
I played a few of them. They are they're different, man. They don't behave like normal amps.
That's what I've heard, and
Yeah.
I'm always intrigued to do stuff like that. And that's another thing is like you get to try a lot of gear. You guys are always going to guitar shops at local places, playing gear. You went to a guitar museum recently.
Yeah, Songbirds. That's where we played the Dumbles and some crazy old Strat.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Chattanooga.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, just that kind of stuff. The fact that you guys expose people to what you're doing when you're out there on tour.
It's not as cool as it sounds. It's like I think maybe like my 15-year-old self would have been really envious, but like I don't know. It was nice, but that stuff. Like I don't dig, people like Joe Bonamassa like now own like a quarter of the good gear in the world, but it's also very disillusioning because when he plays, he just sounds like Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah.
Whether you like, I'm not gonna pass judgment on that, but like I'm saying, it doesn't change anything you do too profoundly. It's like you should have, like, if you're gonna make guitar your life, at some point you're gonna kind of reach the gear, the high level gear and stuff that fits your playing, and maybe dial in your tone. Sure, it's like it's good to try things, it's good to make changes, but it's like you don't need a $20,000 amp
True.
to
Yeah.
sound good. There are a lot of things that do. There are a lot of gear at the very high level of gear does approximately the same thing. 100-watt head does a thing, and obviously like different tubes kind of change it, different speakers change it.
Yep.
But you need to get in the ballpark of what you're going for as soon as you can. And I think it's very possible, and a lot of people that are waiting for gear, it's just an excuse to not get down to business. Like if you're making a record and you're just waiting for that perfect LA studio and the nicest plugins and the best amps, and it's like no, it's not how it works. Like serious people make the best thing they can with what they have around them.
Yes, and sometimes that actually, having those ingredients actually creates something altogether different than what they could have created had they had all of the best things at their disposal. So,
And creating something beautiful has to do with just doing your best at the time.
yeah.
And you see a lot of people that have a lot of money and a lot of access to the best gear are much past their peak artistically.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
true.
mean? Like if Zeppelin had to make another record now, probably the guitars that would be on that record would be worth $100 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everybody would bust it out, but they're so past.
Yep.
Like Jimmy Page or something, or even like somebody younger. It's not like it's not like a new Steve Vai album.
Exactly.
It's going to be so epic now, even though he has access to the best things available.
That's true. And he even still just uses some of the old gear that he had from back in the day anyway, so.
For me at this point, I don't know, when we go to the studio, I just bring my amp and plug it in. I like it.
And like you said, there are so many people when you go to the studio where it's just like, we're going to amp it up and reamp it and then bi-amp it, and then we're going to do different plugins on it and everything. And there's people that will just manipulate the hell out of the guitar sound in the studio as opposed to just amp.
I don't believe in that. I never reamped anything, and things react. The amp is a part of your instruments. Like, it reacts to your playing. It's not something you play things through. It's like, different harmonics pop out, and I would hit the string different if I wanted to create different kinds of sounds. This whole idea of of engineering, your record rather than capturing your sound is very foreign to me. But I think I have a different set of heroes. I'm more old school. My favorite players like Charlie Parker and stuff, or Django, they had one sound.
Yeah.
Like the way I think about, of course I use a distorted sound and delay, but that's still I'm always trying to play with my one sound. I don't have 7 distortion sounds.
Exactly.
I have one sound. It's kind of like a voice.
Yeah.
And that might change from year to year, slightly, maybe going through a different pedal, but I don't think the interesting thing, some players really have this idea that every time they play a solo, it needs to have a different sound to it, or it's boring. It's it's not how it's you need your playing to be the interesting part. If you draw too much attention to the way you're coloring your tone, it's cool, but what are you showcasing the best of pedal, a NAMM show of 2019?
Yeah,
that's the point of making an album.
Yeah, it's the NAMM of tones, and I get what you're saying. That's where it can be distracting. Where and I'm not trying to, because I play in a band with a guy with a Kemper, but one of the distracting things about a Kemper is you could have a Fender Twin and then a Marshall and then a 6505 tone all coming out in the same song, and if you know what's going on, you're man, these tones they sound good, but it's also man, you would need so much gear to try to recreate this live if you had to, and I don't know.
I don't buy that camper stuff. That's
I heard you on the walk down to Mexico. Your thought process on that one.
I was quoting Mason from Vertex. He had the best analogy. He said that digital stuff is trying to sell blow-up dolls to sex addicts. It's you just are not if you had a taste of the real thing, you're just not in. Listen, this is the way I think about it. But jokes aside, people will always try to find the tools that make them fit into the context they're playing in. The problem is that there are very few people anymore that play with real contexts.
Okay.
Meaning backing tracks has become the thing you put guitar sounds on.
Yep.
Through your computer speakers. So if you're playing through a Marshall, the mids coming from your speaker are not going to fit in the mix in your house of what's coming through. It's not going to blend in the air. It's going to squash it.
Yep.
So you go for more and more digital gear because it's not a Marshall. It's Marshall in a frame.
Yep.
It's Marshall inside the computer, in the box. It's digital Marshall. It has the Marshall-y thing, but it's so tiny that it fits in the tiny world that your pretend musicians are in. And then when you go to the show and you mic them up and you throw them through the PA, all you're doing is you're mixing that backing track through the PA and your thing. It doesn't have a place in the real sonic space of the room. We don't play like that. So it's I'm playing, with a real drum set, and I'm not using any monitors on stage other than for saxophone.
Yep.
I'm hearing the bass from the bass amp. I'm hearing the drums from the acoustic drums. There's no if I had a digital kind of thing, it would just disappear. I would have to basically mix everything in my monitors and then mix the guitar in there too to hear it.
Yeah.
So it's just every speaker in the room, you're basically mixing a little record, and then you have this miniature picture of music. It's not the acoustically what we're going for.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. The benefits of the Kemper could be outweighed by maybe your proclivity to tone easily, because the benefit is I can carry 476 different amp models all in one carryable doohickey to any show. So it is.
The benefit is if you're playing the kind of music where guitar is a tiny detail that needs to fit in a very rich mix.
Yes.
Then it's gonna be fine.
Yep.
If you're trying to be a voice on your instrument and play music basically electroacoustic music, which is what rock was till very recently, then it's not gonna work. You know, I mean, I went to a student of mine bought me tickets to go see Generation X, and I saw Tosin Obasi and then Nuno Bettencourt, and it's like seeing like a tiny person and a giant. Because when you see like two big Marshalls and a fractal back to back, it's just like one of them sounds like a joke.
I totally get what you're saying, because even if you dial in like this is the most perfect we can make whatever digital sound like a amp number X, you know, and then you go live and you hear amp number X, they sound a little bit different. Like you can like you and I could tell, maybe like the layman couldn't, but I've also been someone who's like, I'm gonna go buy this amp and I'm gonna go buy that amp, and this one sounds different and I'm gonna try that one out. So I've been trying to like go through different amps and try different pedals, so I know how tone can and should sound. But like, you know, like you said, maybe to the layman they might not understand that this thing is just kind of like a boxed version
the
of.
layman won't understand because it's very subtle. It's also the fact that an amp, when you're playing electric guitar, like for me, I hate playing like not 100-watt heads. Like if I have to play a 50-watt tube head, it drives me crazy because, you know, just when you get used to the amount of air moving into the headroom and the dynamic range. I tried to play a Friedman. I bought a Friedman and I sold it after one show, and it's because it was just too compressed. You know, I couldn't get the amp to behave in a way that made sense with the way I learned how to play guitar. It was too. I feel that way about humbuckers too. It's like it covers up so much of your playing that you know, if you're the kind of player that worked on precision and you're not hitting strings you're not trying to hit, and you know you play everything fairly cleanly, then you get to enjoy, you know, the volume, the slight volume changes coming from your right hand. And if something just kind of squashes everything to where it takes it away from you, then you really feel like you don't have any sort of room. It's like you're in a prison where you can't express yourself with like that like thing of pushing a little bit and pulling a little bit back. You know, it's more like how. Obviously, it's not for layman's, but it's the shading of your playing. It's the very like tiny minutia that makes you feel like you're actually speaking.
Yeah, you lose a lot of articulation.
Yeah, and it's like, to me, it's like when I lose it, I really feel like I'm sucking. Right?
Yeah.
It feels like my instrument, like the tiny bit of freedom I have, just got taken. You know.
Yeah, it's like now you can only speak in a monotone voice, and this is like all the better you can get. Sure. And it doesn't get any louder or quieter, and everything sounds like, you know.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Eventually,
you're
just
like that. So it's like you're always, you know, if you're used to have like, you know, it's 2% more freedom, and then it gets taken away. You really it becomes all you think about it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, but if you're not aware that exists, and you're just trying to, like, you know, you're the kind of player that's just trying to play a part, I can totally see where it's like just pressing buttons, like gain. So and that's like you just different. That's different. But like for me, it just feels like.
Yeah, and I mean that was something I was actually thinking about on the drive down here. Was this? It's not like I feel like a lot of, and I'm guilty of this just as much as anybody else, but I feel like too many people lean on the gain knob too hard. You know, it's just like, well, gain, it sounds good, it's metal, it's heavy, it's distorted or whatever, and like you said, it brings that compressed thing in there that kind of just takes away from some of your articulation that you have available to you.
There's also the issue of like it could be very scary to stand next to a loud amp. Yeah. You know, and if you hear if you put your ear hypothetically against your own mouth and heard yourself speak, all the breath and lip and spit noises, you might be like afraid to make a sound because you're hyper aware at that point. Yep. And when you're playing with when we were opening for Alan Holdsworth, the whole bottom cab, the bottom like two cabs that he used for his lead tone, he would flip over and shoot him backwards because he didn't want to hear it, you know. So a lot of times people use reverb or delay to put distance, not between the audience and the sound, but between themselves and the sound. Okay. They're afraid of their own sound, so reverb just artificially makes it sound like it's far away. The problem is that obviously from where the audience is standing, you sound like you're actually far away, and then you have reverb on top of it. So you have the actual reverb and the digital reverb, and it just makes it sound like you're in a cave. But the psychological reason of using reverb is just because, to put that distance between you and your sound. Because it's scary to be the one controlling the sound.
It's very true.
Right there. And a lot of times, it's like flipping the amp the other way or wearing earplugs or something like that actually gives you the distance you need from your sound, or just getting used to it, which is, it's hard. But, pianists have the same problem when they overuse that, sustain pedal. Just to make it sound ambient. But the problem is it sounds soupy when you stand a few feet away.
Starting to lose articulation in there, all those nuancical bits. This is actually a really great conversation because it's been a while since I've sat down and thought about music this deeply, and you're somebody that obviously this is all you do is just sit down and think about music as deeply as you do. Which, if anybody goes online, they'll figure it out in a hurry that this is what you guys are all about. And you guys are everywhere online. You got Facebook is where you're probably most popular.
Bandcamp.
You're on Bandcamp. I think I saw on Instagram as well. It's Marbin Music. Is that on everywhere? Is it Marbin Music? Marbinmusic.com. You guys are finishing up a tour as of the day we're recording this. But
that's right. Last day of tour right now.
But I'm sure you're going to go on tour again because you guys are
January.
always... Yeah, okay. So you're taking like a month off. And, all right. So you can take the holidays off and go back out on tour. I don't know what that tour is, but I'm sure you're coming back through.
Not Iowa. We're going to Texas and down south. Deep south.
Makes sense. Wintertime, go south.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and then, we have a new album coming out December 1st.
Cool.
Yeah, it's called Strong Thing. It's all ready.
Awesome.
And it's already. We're selling the VIP package which is. You can get it for them. Actually, I don't know when this is coming out. I think it's going to be only till next Friday. But it comes with a limited edition T-shirt and Marbin Strikes Back coffee table book. So there's only 7 days to get that. But after that, we'll start pre-sale for just the album.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
That Marbin Strikes Back coffee table book. It'll be worth it for that alone. Oh, man.
Yeah. So that's available right now on our Bandcamp, but only till next Friday.
Okay, cool. Cool, man.
After that will be the pre-sale, and then December 1st, Strong Thing comes out.
That's awesome. Strong Thing's the name of the new album.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I've been following you guys for your last 3 albums. It's been fun to see you guys live, see you at shows.
Well, tonight's all new music. You've never heard any of it.
Cool. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
I'm really, really happy you sat down. Took some time out of your day to sit down and talk with me a little bit here. We've given shout-outs. So we've talked about Marbin, your band. We've talked about shows you got coming up, choosing tone, all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to toss in here while we're talking?
Go to marbinmusic.bandcamp.com. There's a free sampler there. If it's absolutely free, if you're not into buying music, you can just download it. It has one song from every album, and you can just enjoy it.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. One from every album.
Yep.
You get a little tiny snapshot of a taste from everything.
That's right.
Dude, that's cool, man. That's really cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight at Lefty's, man. So it's going to be great.
Fun.
All right. Well, check you later, man. That was a fun one. I forgot to mention in the intro, that was actually recorded in a coffee shop. Man, back in the day, before I was doing all the, video and things like that for the podcast, I recorded anywhere and everywhere. And I get it to an extent, like I still do that, but I was all over the map recording some of these, and like I said, that one was in a coffee shop. I think a few weeks earlier from this episode, I was in like a parking lot, and I've recorded a couple at like parks and things like that. I mean, I've been all over the place recording these, and I still go all over the place and record, some of the episodes somewhere. Sometimes I have to meet people at public locations and do crazy things like that. Otherwise, we do got the Skype stuff and things like that as well. So if you guys are interested in being on the podcast, hit me up. I'm still filtering through some people that wanted to be on the podcast. I got a few of them on there. The last few weeks, I had some people hit me up and brought them on the podcast to talk about some things going on. Did a replay episode this week while I reschedule a few things out. And if you guys want to be on an episode, hit me up. I'm letting you know ahead of time. My schedule's weird. It's tough. It's busy. But if we can fit you in, I'll definitely fit you in and try and do an episode of the podcast so I don't have to do another replay. And I did this instead of doing a solo episode. I noticed the replay episodes definitely do a little bit better than the solo episodes. So maybe I'll keep the solo episodes to a minimum, and we'll do a few more replays from back in the past. For people that may have just recently joined and didn't know some of these old episodes are back there, they're back there. There's some gems in the back. You can definitely tell my interviewing style has changed, and yeah, I don't know. I was also pretty nervous for this one. Like I said earlier, this is one of those ones where it was, one of the more famous people I'd interviewed. Looked up to him quite a bit, seen him online all the time, watched him play live quite a few times. So it was really fun to have him around and have him on the podcast. So, 2.5 years later, thanks, Dani. Appreciate it. If you guys are looking for Audible Farm goodies, you can go to audiblefarm.com, find links to everything. We got the social media there. There's also the Audible Farm YouTube channel. Go ahead and click subscribe there. We got all sorts of stuff gets uploaded there, mostly the podcast. Sometimes there's guitar painting videos and mod videos and things like that there. So hit subscribe if you're interested in that. And if you're already watching on YouTube and subscribed, thank you very much. Otherwise, the Audible Farm shop is shop.audiblefarm.com. It did sell a few more shirts this last week. Thank you. Lee Klett bought a few shirts. I went and saw him play live. Speaking of which, I saw a lot of shows this last weekend. I saw Lee play live, and then I saw Emily Johnson play, and then I saw Matt Woods play, and who else? And then I saw Lee and Jesse play like a tandem show together, Jesse Wilson. So that was really cool. That was a really fun time. I've played a lot of crazy shows this year too. I got more crazy ones coming up. Three Finger Betty's booking a lot of big shows with a lot of bands that were, at one point in time were huge national touring bands. A lot of people. They sold a lot of records and things like that. So it's really cool to be able to do that with these bands. But I'm also playing shows with Clint Riedel, and I'm playing shows with Jesse Wilson. And believe it or not, I've played equal amount of shows with almost every band. So it's been a kind of a wild year this year. Last year was pretty much one-sided, and this year it's kind of been evened out. So it's kind of been wild. So go out and check out some live music. Like I said, I think I saw 4 shows this last weekend. Maybe that's, a testament to what was going on in town at that time. But Fort Dodge always has a lot of shows going on, or at least in the northern Iowa area, so check it out. If you guys are out and about, let me know where the shows are at. If you guys want to find some shows I have available, I do have the Audible Farm group on Facebook, which has a calendar, and the calendar you can click on it and see what shows are coming up on what days. And the shows that are on there are just shows I see on Facebook and share in there. Otherwise, they're ones that people share in there themselves. If you have a Facebook event set up for your event, just share your Facebook event in that group, and it will automatically post your event right to the calendar. So if you guys want to do that, that's awesome. Appreciate everyone that's looking at that. I've had a lot of people telling me they look at it every week, kind of see what's going on and plan their weekends around some shows if they can. So that's really cool. So thank you guys for checking that out. Otherwise, the Audible Farm Patreon has got video versions of the Audible Farm podcast, $1 a month. Otherwise, the audio versions are always going to be free. So thank you guys very much. We gained a couple patrons recently, so thank you guys for becoming patrons of the Audible Farm podcast. Otherwise, always going to be free in the audio versions. So thank you guys for listening. Like, share, subscribe, tweet, retweet, poke, whatever, all the good stuff. Thank you guys very much. I'm out of here. I'll check you guys next week. Peace.